Hello and welcome everyone who's watching this Lunchtime's Advice Line Live event. My name's Sophia and I'm the Community Advice Services Manager here at Scottish Autism, and I'm joined by a couple of our community advisors from the Advice Line, Sheila and Samantha. Thank you both for joining me this lunchtime. Today our Advice Line Live event is Ask Us Anything. So if you do have any questions for those of you that are watching just now, please feel free to post your question in the comments below. As always, I will try and my best to keep an eye on the comments below. However, just to give you some time to post those questions, actually we do have a number of pre-submitted questions this lunchtime. So I guess Samantha, Sheila, if you're happy to, we'll probably start answering some of those pre-submitted questions for those that are watching. Um, so I guess the first question that we're going to look at is from a parent who's got in touch about their child and kind of talking about the fact that their child has a very limited diet and food intake. And as a parent, they're obviously extremely worried about, I guess, the amount of food that their child is eating. And I guess, Sheila, I'm going to ask you, do you have any suggestions around how you can support your child, support her child around, I guess, those elements of food?
Yeah, so firstly, I completely understand how concerning this can be if your child's not eating. You know, we all want our children to eat well and to be nourished and to thrive. So I completely understand how it can be a concern. And there can be various factors at play here, of course. I would always recommend in the first instance just to seek medical advice. So, you know, check with your GP, get your child checked to make sure that there's no medical concerns that need addressed. And then, you know, once you've had that checked out, then let's delve a wee bit into what is going on. It could be a good idea to keep a food diary. Obviously, it helps monitor when, you know, if and when there's certain times within the day, perhaps, that your child could be a bit more distressed and less keen to be wanting to eat their meal. There could be sensory issues at play. You know, try and keep the environment as calm as possible. Also with regards to sensory, it could be the smell of the food, the texture within their mouth. There could be interoception, which a lot of people don't realize, which is another sense that we all have, whereby it's the feeling of hunger and thirst. Your child may not actually be feeling that as much as you appreciate. So that's something to get checked out as well. You can always speak to an occupational therapist with regards to sensory issues as well. Please try and keep the environment as calm as possible, like I said. And it's, you know, I know we've, as parents, it's very much, you know, well, this is the dinner table and this is meal time, and, you know, but sometimes we'll have to look at things a wee bit differently in these cases. A bit more informal. If the TV needs to be on, fine. If the child needs to listen to an audiobook or have a book in front of them, then fine. Whatever's going to work for your child. Please, you know, consider these things I've mentioned.
Definitely. I think, you know, food generally, whether it be around kind of, I guess, diet or the amount of food is quite complex.
Yeah.
There could be a number of different, I guess, elements at play there. Like you say, you know, it might well be that there's kind of you know, sensory needs that you know needs consideration. But also I think quite rightly, as you said, actually, I think, you know, it's always good to seek out medical advice and just to ensure that there's no kind of medical concerns underlying there as well. And it might well be that even the kind of medical professionals do suggest keeping a food diary just to kind of, from their perspective, seeing what that food intake is actually like. Samantha, is there anything kind of you would add to those points that Sheila has mentioned around food at all, and any other considerations that as a parent should be making?
I think it's just being really patient and just taking your time. You know, appreciating that for your young person that, you know, trying new foods and expanding that can be quite challenging. And even being able to like track those small wins. And just making, like, if you are making changes, kind of making one small change at a time. You know, trying to try sort of similar foods in terms of like the taste, the texture, the smell. You know, some children may like foods that are quite crunchy or quite soft. And also even just getting your child involved with things like, you know, food shopping and food preparation and things like that. And even if you're eating something, you know, making them something, and then if you're having something different, offering that choice, that element of choice, but also managing your own expectations that by offering that choice, your child at that point might not actually feel ready, and that's okay.
Yeah, and I think that's really important is that they might not be ready at that point, and that is okay. But I think, like you say, just kind of increasing that awareness of different types of food, whether it be, you know, a separate meal that you've made for yourself, or whether, you know, or whether it's kind of a tasting board there that's kind of for everyone on the table to kind of delve into and kind of can pick and choose what it is that people eat within that. So no, definitely. Um, I'm gonna go on to another kind of pre-submitted question, which might feed into some of the other questions that we receive as part of the kind of Advice Line Live event today, if people want to obviously submit their questions. But the next question is very, very different. It's in relation to education. Obviously, through our Advice Line, we do receive quite a number of inquiries in relation to education, really. But for this instance, it's from a parent again in relation to their daughter. And unfortunately, their daughter has been able to attend school for the kind of last 2 years or maybe longer than that, due to extreme anxiety. And, you know, through the inquiries that we do receive through our advice line, this is something that we hear quite frequently through our advice line, unfortunately. But her daughter has recently kind of received a diagnosis of autism. And I guess, you know, even though she's not attended school for the last 2 years or so, she has done some study for Nat5s at home, but has felt physically unable to kind of attend school to sit final exams. At this moment in time, the parents kind of said, the school have said that they feel that they can't offer support unless she attends school. But I guess, Samantha, I'm wondering, is there any other alternatives or supports that this parent can consider in relation to, I guess, the situation that they find themselves in just now?
Yeah, it's a really difficult situation, and it may be an idea to first of all speak to Inquire. So Inquire Scotland's advice service for additional support for learning. So it can be good to get in touch with them. They have a helpline, they have like an email address that you can get in contact depending on what your communication preferences are. That would probably provide like a good starting point. And then also the Scottish Qualifications Authority, they also have some information around alternative assessment arrangements in terms of, you know, if you're looking at things like qualifications as well. So I would say those are two really sort of good starting points. And then there's also another organisation called Call Scotland who have a pupil assessment and support service, and they have actually quite a lot of resources on their website, not only for professionals like teachers, but also aimed at parents as well. So that can be another helpful resource to look at, you know, those three things as a starting point.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess, you know, I want to acknowledge at this point that it's, you know, for a daughter, obviously there is that extreme anxiety, but as a parent, obviously you want the best for your child, and you want them to kind of flourish and thrive in that education space, and be able to achieve what they can and want to achieve as well, and kind of how's that facilitated. And like you say, Samantha, you know, Inquire is a really good starting point in terms of kind of getting to understand what, you know, rights parents or even young people have in relation to education. But also obviously the SQA, the Scottish Qualification Association, like you say, they do have information around kind of, I guess, you know, adjustments that can be made to support assessments, and that might be a good starting point to help maybe facilitate some of the conversations with the school in relation to kind of what adjustments would potentially work for her daughter in mind, because I guess everyone's very different in terms of what they might need in that setting.
Yeah.
But I guess, you know, for that particular individual, what I would also say is it might be worth us having a conversation over the phone and just exploring things slightly further. So we will be in touch with everyone that's kind of pre-submitted questions today. But I guess what we might do is also try and organise phone calls to discuss things further as well. So thank you for that, Samantha. And I guess continuing with the education theme almost, we have also received a question in relation to further education. And obviously further education or post-school can look different for different people. But again, a parent and carer has kind of got in touch in relation to their son who is applying to university this year. Obviously that is a stressful process in itself. There's a lot of uncertainty around that because obviously you put in your different selections for different universities, and it all is relying, I guess, on grades at the end of the school term. But I guess this parent and carer has kind of spoken to their son about obviously, putting within his kind of application to university about kind of disclosing the fact that he is autistic. And her son feeling that actually unsure as to whether to share that disclosure in terms of whether there could end up being, I guess, discrimination in relation to that. And are therefore in a bit of a dilemma in terms of whether to share that or not. And Sheila, I just wonder whether you have any kind of thoughts around that at all.
Yeah. Well, hopefully there wouldn't be any discrimination if you did choose to divulge that information. However, it's, disclosing your diagnosis is such a personal choice. There really is no wrong or right answer in this instance, I feel. I would, however, like to say, your personal statement, that's a document that you produced very early on within the process when you're applying through UCAS. So they're obviously in the early stages of the application process. If your child doesn't want to disclose within the personal statement, then it doesn't mean to say that they can't do it further down the line. So, it could be they could disclose to UCAS further down the line, or if they do get offers from various universities, it's not too late to have a chat with the universities as well, when you do get offered those places, these unconditional places. So it's something that you can always think about just now. You don't need to disclose within your personal statement. However, if you want to, that's fine as well. You can do it further down the line. So it's something to bear in mind, but it's a completely personalised thing. I do feel, however, the universities have got more on board, particularly since the pandemic, with their student support services have improved from what I've seen. So I'd like to think that if you did disclose, then, there would be some support there for you.
Yeah. And I think, like you say, disclosing kind of a diagnosis is an extremely personal choice. It's a huge part of somebody's identity and who they are. So you're obviously opening up that piece of who you are to other people.
Yes.
And like you say, it's that personal, really personal choice. And I guess that's things that we can, I guess, talk things through with people about as well through the advice line. We have had people contacting us in the past, where actually they've wanted to talk that through, not necessarily always to do with further education, but even employment in terms of, do I wish to make that disclosure or not? And sometimes just talking it through with somebody, some people find that really helpful to make that decision as to whether, yes, I will, or actually, no, I'm not going to at this moment in time. So again, I guess, we're more than happy to have a conversation with this parent or carer, or even the young individual themselves in terms of that and how to navigate, I guess, further education and that disclosure as well. So thank you, Sheila. I am just going to say at this point is obviously if you do have any questions, again, please pop them into the comments below. I'm more than happy to obviously answer any questions live that are kind of popped in those comments below. I have noticed we've had a wee comment from Donna in relation to education, asking for us to kind of give her a call in relation to talking that through further. Donna, I will get a member of the marketing team to obviously kind of reach out to you, or if you want to send a private message via Facebook with your contact details, we can organise for an advisor or a member of the team to contact you to talk about obviously the kind of education questions that you have. So going back to obviously our kind of pre-submitted questions, like I said, we did have quite a few submitted before the event today. We had quite a few questions around, I guess, accessing an autism assessment. From an advice line perspective, obviously we receive a high number of inquiries in this nature. A lot of people wondering, how do I go about accessing an autism assessment as an adult? What should I expect? What happens in terms of, the outcome, whether I receive a diagnosis or not? What does that mean next for me? And I guess, Samantha, I'm going to bring this question to you, these kind of numerous questions to you in terms of what kind of, I guess, kind of guidance can we give in relation to these types of questions that we receive?
So yeah, we do receive quite a lot of questions around accessing an autism assessment. We'd always say that the first thing to do is speak to your GP to discuss that as a starting point. In relation to assessment, there's two routes. There's going via the NHS or going via a private provider. And that in terms of if you were then looking to access an assessment, and you discussed that, and then a referral had gone in from the GP, in order to know what to expect, that the sign guidelines can be really, really helpful, to kind of provide a little bit more information of what that potentially can look like. But in terms of autism as well, some people choose to self-identify as well, because we appreciate that, you know, wait times can vary between different health boards, and also as the advice line, you know, we do have that space where we can discuss with individuals how they're feeling and talk these things through. You know, because some people may be looking to access things like peer support and things like that, you know, with or without a diagnosis, and you know, there can be different options depending on what area you're in.
Definitely, and you know, I think you know, in terms of the advice and guidance that we provide in this particular area, obviously, you know, we can give kind of, I guess, guidance around how to support that discussion with the GP. So I guess if people want to make contact with us to kind of talk that through, whether it be via email, live chat, or via phone, we can obviously support that. And you know, you mentioned wait times there, Samantha. Obviously, it varies across health boards, and we do have kind of snapshots of data in terms of what that can look like in certain kind of health boards. And the reason why I'm kind of picking up on the waiting for assessments just now is that we do have a question that's come in live, from Nat, regarding her older child who's 13 years old, and they've been told it's a 2-year minimum wait for CALMS. And they have asked if there is another way for assessment. And obviously, Samantha, you've touched upon briefly that there's either going via the NHS or privately. And, you know, Nat, we would be happy to kind of talk things through with you. But what's actually come into mind in terms of that question from Nat is there's obviously support we can offer to Nat as a parent and carer at this moment in time,
Yeah.
called Get Set for Autism. And Sheila, I'm wondering, could you give us a wee brief overview of what Get Set for Autism is?
Yeah, I was just sitting thinking the same when you were talking, actually. So yeah, so for parents or carers who have a child 18 or under who has received a diagnosis or who is currently on the pathway waiting for assessment, please do get in touch, because we have a super program called Get Set for Autism, whereby one of the advice teams, so it could be myself, Samantha, or some of the others, or just a small team, sort of scoop yourselves up as a family and speak with you, offer tailored advice and support every couple of weeks on a video call or a phone call, whatever suits yourself. Like I said, be tailored, so we break down your areas of support, your concerns. We'd offer guidance and advice during the call, and then we go behind the scenes and do our bit of work, offer you signposting and further advice as well. And parents well, they tell us they find it super beneficial, because it is that tailored support. I know that parents often feel in limbo at this stage when their child's sort of waiting for that CALMS assessment. So we are here meantime to offer our advice and support.
Yeah. And Get Set's very much about kind of supporting that understanding of autism. It's also about, you know, I guess, linking parents with relevant professionals or other agencies if we feel that actually they would be more kind of appropriate in terms of supporting, to kind of help with that kind of ongoing journey almost. And we, you know, as well as that, it's about kind of, I guess, supporting parents to kind of develop kind of strategies in supporting their child moving forwards as well. So it's quite varied in terms of the support that we offer through Get Set for Autism. And you know, people choose to focus on very different areas as well in terms of whatever their kind of family circumstances are at that moment in time. So some people focus on kind of sleep or education, stress, for example, anxiety. So lots and lots of different things. And so Nat, what I would say is again, if you want to kind of private message your contact details, or if you want to contact our advice line directly, or if you want to leave your details with us, we can contact you and obviously kind of give you more information regarding Get Set for Autism, and obviously get you kind of signed up to that program so we can offer you that support. So going back to kind of another kind of pre-submitted question, is around employment. We again get a lot of inquiries in relation to employment. But for this individual, they've recently received a diagnosis. And, with that, there's been a bit of a process there in terms of reflecting on their life, and identifying where there's been moments of maybe overwhelm, and how that links, I guess, to their autistic identity and that diagnosis that they've obviously just received. But with that reflection, and with their kind of current circumstances, what they've come to recognize is they're finding their current employment quite difficult, and really kind of starting to question whether they can sustain that kind of employment that they currently have. But then on the other hand, what they've reflected is that they find the recruitment process extremely difficult. And therefore, I guess, wondering what support is out there in relation to, I guess, employment overall, whether it be that they choose to decide to sustain that employment, what could that look like? But also, if I was to look for a new role, and go through applications and interviews, what support is out there in relation to that? And Sheila, I'm going to direct this one to you.
Yeah, so I guess initially this person hasn't disclosed, but I wonder whether, and again, this is a personal thing, whether they've actually disclosed their diagnosis to their current employer. Again, like I say, that's completely personal choice, but possibly disclosing that may open some conversations around what support can look like for that person within the role they're in. However, if you're looking to gain new employment, there are, or indeed within your employment that you're in, there are support options out there. Usually within your local authority, there's an employability scheme. So have a look within that. It's usually your local authority will have like an employment support scheme. Also, I recommend you reach out to ACAS. They offer advice for employees, employers to improve workplace relationships. They actually have a helpline which is open Monday to Friday, 8 till 5. They can be a super support with regards to seeking new employment, getting help with applications, CVs, interviews. Then Enable Works may be able to help there. There's also a support called Access to Work. I think we're putting the links within the chat. Is that correct, Sophia?
Yes. Yeah.
So people can access the links from there, save me rattling off. But there are support options out there.
Definitely. And I think it's a really hard decision to come to in terms of whether to kind of continue and sustain that employment, or whether to kind of seek new employment. And that can be a kind of quite daunting process in itself, because actually, like, there's obviously the process of that, of the applications, the interviews, but then also what does that employment then look like once you've gained that employment? And you've mentioned a few things there, Sheila, not just in relation to kind of that current employment, but it may help in terms of that new employment as well. So in relation to access to work, kind of obviously kind of putting forwards for that kind of assessment around access to work. And that can come result in a number of I guess different outcomes for different people, dependent on what that potential support can look like. And it can help discussions around reasonable adjustments, for example, or it could identify and that actually, would it be supportive to have maybe training or consultancy in terms of, I guess, the employment environment. And I will say, here at Scottish Autism, we have a great training consultancy team that have worked with different organisations around, I guess, increasing that autism understanding and acceptance, and looking at kind of different areas of support. So that's great. Samantha, is there anything you would want to add to that in terms of the employment perspective?
I think Sheila's really covered everything, to be honest. I think having, a chat with ACAS, as we said, they can cover lots of different things depending on what you want, and they can be helpful for employees and employers as well. So I think it's just, starting with those few different links, and then seeing, is this employment, for example, something that I want to continue with, and there could be maybe some adjustments being put in place to make that feel more supportive, or actually, is this maybe not the right environment, and looking at other options.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. No, totally agree. But again, I would also, say we've obviously got contact details of everyone that has pre-submitted questions today. And I guess what Samantha and Sheila will do, along with maybe other members of the team as well, is obviously kind of reach out to those individuals to kind of pick up these questions further and obviously talk things through further as well. Because I guess they can't always be easily answered through Advice Line Live. Sometimes we need a bit more information to kind of, I guess, give the best advice, guidance that we can that's personalized to that individual. I have noticed that we've got a few more questions that have kind of come in, and I'm aware of the time. So aware that we might not have much time to answer some of the other questions that have come under, but I guess I'm wondering whether either of you have any thoughts around this particular question around what support is available or, around for older autistic adults.
So in
Karen.
terms of support for older autistic adults, sometimes in terms of that support, it's more sort of peer support rather than sort of age-specific support as such. Unfortunately, there probably isn't as much out there in terms of older autistic adults. So I think it's looking at different, peer support options as such. There are some organisations, for example, like Swan, that have peer support specifically for women, and also there are for example, there are sort of we have like our national peer support group, for example, and it's really area dependent as well, because different area, the support can vary between different areas, so it really depends on the area. So I think having a little bit more further information in relation to that can be quite helpful as well, so then we can provide sort of more specific advice.
Definitely. I think, in those instances, like you say, sometimes, when we talk about support, is it kind of individual one-to-one support that's being looked for, or is it kind of that group peer support? And actually, I always say there's nothing quite like peer support, from others that are maybe of a similar age, or part of their journey at where they're at. But also sometimes, support can be kind of formed through kind of common and shared interests as well. So I think for yourself, I think it's Karen. I think that having a further conversation about, I guess, your question would be really, really helpful. And I guess when I was reading that question as well, I'm also aware of obviously the Autism Network, who are also kind of providing support for those with a late diagnosis, specifically for older adults of kind of 50 plus as well. So again, there are kind of like you say, Samantha, pockets of support in different areas, in relation to kind of older adults specifically. So Karen, it would be great if you could also kind of obviously send us your details or obviously contact the Advice Line, and we'd be happy to have a kind of wider conversation around that. Unfortunately, looking at the time, I think that is kind of us coming to an end today, in terms of our Advice Line Live. I am aware that there's possibly a couple of questions that we haven't managed to answer this morning. It's been a very busy Advice Line Live event. So for anyone's questions that we haven't answered, our marketing team will obviously kind of give you the Advice Line details. Or like I say, if you want to kind of pass your details on privately, we would be happy to obviously pick them up out with of this event today. But Samantha, Sheila, I just want to say a huge thank you for joining me this afternoon. And I hope everyone that's watching has kind of found the discussions helpful this lunchtime. We will be back in December for our kind of final Advice Line Live event for the year. So keep an eye out on our social media posts in relation to the date for that. But I hope everyone has a good day. And like I say, if you have any questions, please get in touch with our Advice Line, and the marketing team will put those details in the comments below. Thank you.